Hi D&D fans, I'm Sparkle's Devil Monster, and tonight we'll be taking a look at Dragon Magazine, issue number 8 from 1977, to see if there's anything in here that perhaps we could use in our 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons games. So, here we are. We have Dragon number 8 with a magician on the cover. He is garbed in a blue shirt, a nice puffy sleeved shirt. He has a hippogriff, a magic wand, and a ring on his middle finger, apparently made of topaz or some other semi-precious stone, and also a neat mustache and some wrinkles and hair slicked back. Looks like to be perhaps in his mid-50s. And altogether, kind of a cool piece of cover art. This deserves a sparkle, but unfortunately, as you see in the text here, most of the magazine is given over to a piece of short fiction called The Finzer Family, A Tale of Modern Magic. So unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, but this is not going to be one of our best issues. As always, I look first for some kind of villain, and that brings us to The Finzer Family, A Tale of Modern Magic. And our villain is none other than Hastings Warren Crummell, a very self-satisfied fellow. He had no reason to be otherwise. He lived in the biggest house on the block with the biggest yard. His father drove the biggest automobile and the most expensive one. His mother was forever telling people that they, the Crummells, were related only to the best people. And he himself was the biggest boy that he knew, even close to his age. And in truth, H.W. Crummell, better known as Crumble to his peers, was big. Ugh. So in the days before Harry Potter, we had a story of magical boys and muggles. Crumbo is a muggle. Swithin was an almost ideal victim. He made shrill, loud, pleasing noises when his face was rubbed with snow. He was short-legged and unable to run away from Crumble in the snow. He was stupid and tried to fight back, and at the same time never seemed to run home with wild tales about Crumbo. Not that would have done any good. Even though the Finzers only lived a short block and a half from the Crummells, Crumbo's mother looked down her nose at people who lived in that direction, and she did not approve of those people, 6, and their cat, living together in a little 4-roomed cottage. Crumbo had no fears anyhow, since he knew his mother would believe his story instead of the truth. She always had. As Crumbo lurked in the alleyway, Swithin came towards him, walking very slowly, towing a piece of ice along the slick sidewalk. His books were tucked under his right arm, and both hands were plunged in his coat pockets. Swithin wasn't as calm as he looked. He had spotted Crumbo before he had gotten off the bus. Okay, now, no. This has nothing to do with Dungeons & Dragons. Why? Why must this be our villain? But unfortunately, Dragon number 8 gives us no alternative. This is the one NPC it has. So, an ally, perhaps? Well, there's Margot, that's Mother. There she is, Margot Finzer. I suppose she could be the boy's ally, but I don't see using her in a D&D game. She likes to rock in her rocking chair in front of her favorite window and watch the snow sift down, or even better, to see it blow and swirl in great drifty patterns. Well, I suppose if you're playing D&D and you give your character a thorough backstory, and your character's younger, although all the children in D&D 5th edition are non-combatants, you might want to run to your mother for help. Or maybe your mother's a powerful magic user. And then background NPC. Swithin has a sister, Gay Finzer. She's got braids. Yeah, enough of that. There is actually a couple of bright spots in the otherwise rather dull Dragon number 8. There is some excellent world building by Gary Gygax on page 4. As a huge fan of the 2nd edition campaign setting Planescape, I was very excited to see a nice section on planes in D&D. So here is a diagram of the planes. This is the first time the planes appeared in Dragon magazine. And they are concepts of spatial, temporal, and physical relationships in D&D. For game purposes, the DM is to assume the existence of an infinite number of coexisting planes. The normal plane for human-type life forms is the prime material plane. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A number of planes actually touch this one and are reached with relative ease, and he goes on to describe negative and positive and elemental planes, the ethereal plane, which coexists in exactly the same space as the prime material plane, and the astral plane, which warps the dimension we know as length or distance. Interesting. Typical higher planes are the 7 heavens, the twin paradises, Elysium, the plane of ultimate laws, Nirvana, while the plane of ultimate chaos or entropy is Limbo, very much like Planescape. Typical lower planes are the 9 hells, and you'll see that in Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus in 5th edition, Hades' 3 glooms, and the 666 layers of the abyss. 1977, the days before the Satanic Panic, got rid of all of the, we'll say, classical illusions in D&D. All right. So yeah, it's pretty neat. He describes the inner planes in detail. The outer planes, there are 16 of them. And Gary Gygax says that the outer planes are a collection of the religious and or philosophical goals or anti-goals of mankind and the other intellectual species. In Planescape, the outer planes became the places where the gods live, where the heavens and hells persist that your characters will visit in the afterlife. In my game, I have adopted reincarnation, so a character could die, go to the heaven or hell of a power, a deity, a god or goddess, and then after some amount of time, potentially be reborn into the prime material plane and continue the cycle anew, each time learning a bit, evolving from the experience until that entity is ready to merge with the divine of his or her choosing. The ethereal plane is the transportation system of the inner planes, the elemental planes, earth, water, air, and fire. Planescape added quasi-elemental planes of ash and such, para-elemental planes. The astral plane is the means of transportation from the prime material to the outer planes, and there's various means of accomplishing that. So that's pretty good, the introduction of planes to D&D. Next, on page 5, we have a section on towns in D&D. And usually at this point in the review, I'm looking for something to add a little spice to my dungeons. And here we learn that most D&D campaigns center around a dungeon, and most of the player's time is spent exploring the labyrinth. Remember, these are back in the days of graph paper for drawing maps, and the players would have to draw their own version of the map based on the DM's description. Often they would get it wrong and get horribly lost. And battling the nasties to be found therein. Rightly so, the depths are the place where the most fearsome monsters, trickiest traps, and of course the largest treasures are to be found. As well, there is adequate coverage of wilderness adventures with descriptions and rules especially pertaining to above-ground quests and encounters. Yet, though the rules suggest basing players in a town or village, few DMs do much to flesh out the town and make it a place of interest in itself, and not simply a logistics point for characters. If imagination is used, and there surely should be no dearth of that in any DM, towns can be made enjoyable and worthy of exploration and adventures themselves. So your town can be a dungeon. And the article goes on to describe many different types of buildings to be found in your town. For example, the armorer, who sells, repairs, and fashions armor and weapons, the cobbler for shoes and boots, a cartographer who will sell wilderness and dungeon maps for 100 to 600 gold pieces, depending on the remoteness of the area, a candlestick maker, that's where you get your torches, brands, incense, and candles. There's Dungeons & Dragons Old School Revival, third-party publication called 5 Torches Deep, which I have yet to read, but has an evocative title. Certainly, if you're playing old school D&D, you want to go to that candlestick maker and buy at least 5 torches, because when you're 5 torches deep, you will need another 5 torches to get out. So, get 10. There's a weaver for tunics, breeches, shirts, cloaks, and blankets. Barbers, shave and a haircut, 1 gold piece. A pawn shop, where armor and weapons bought and sold are cheaper, but have a 1 in 6 chance of being defective in some way. Various other artisans, glass blowers, painters, sculptors, and stonemasons. A soothsayer. For 20 gold pieces, this woman or man will predict how a planned expedition or exploit may turn out. A magician, simply a non-player magic user who will cast spells for a fee, say 50 gold per spell level. A brothel, no thieves' quarter would be complete without one. As well as being a haven for earthly delights, it should be brimming with privy information, available for bribes of 10 to 100 gold pieces. Fees are about 20 GP, 35 for the special. 1 to 6 male patrons of all types and classes will be in the waiting area. That includes priests. All classes. And then a square, an open-air square where freelance prostitutes, spies, assassins, and thieves can be met, another good area to purchase purloined items. They go on to describe Fallgraves, an inn and tavern, the surgeon to cure your wounds, although now with a long rest in 5th edition D&D, you get all your hit points back, so there's less of a need to visit a surgeon. And a library, and this is a private library, so you have to pay fees. A number of scholars will seek out knowledge among the many tomes and volumes for a fee. The base value of general information is about 100 gold pieces, with specific facts increasingly more expensive. So that's pretty cool that back in 1977 they had libraries in Dungeons & Dragons. And just next month we have the 5th edition adventure Candlekeep Mysteries coming out, which will be based in Candlekeep, the most famous library in the Forgotten Realms, but could also, these mysteries are modular, and they could also be set in any library in your homebrew game world. And some of them just come out of a book, and you can place a book pretty much anywhere in the game world. All right, so next, a monster. And on page 25, Errol Otis has drawn us a monster. However, unlike the section on plains and towns, it did not sparkle. Here it is. So this is something we don't know. Name that monster, win $25. 350 words or less, tell me its history and statistics. No, I'm not going to give you $25. That was an offer made by Dragon Magazine many, many years ago. If I were to enter the contest, I don't know, I just call it a Naga demon, and I'd have it hit you with its tail that looks like a flail, maybe bash you, headbutt you with the horns. It could be a constrictor snake, perhaps grapple you with the tail. The eyes are piercing. Perhaps it would have a detect lies ability by looking down at you with those devil or demonic eyes. And it could throw rocks, right? But just to make it fun, how about those are not rocks, but eggs? And when they strike, 2d12 baby snakes come out. They're small, but highly venomous. Yeah, doesn't really sparkle for me. Okay, how about magic? Well, sadly, for magic, we have to go back to the Finzer family. And it turns out that the guy on the cover is truly a magician in the sense that he kind of just does tricks at parties and lives a very boring life by his own admission. And there are many restrictions on when he can use his magic. So he just kind of like makes popcorn with it and like makes the TV into a video chat device. Yeah. So magic in this issue of Dragon Magazine is not that great. There is a little description of it, which again brings up those Harry Potter versus the Muggle vibes. Magic. A few people will readily admit that they believe in it. Many will say that magic possibly existed at one time, but is no longer practiced today. More will say nonsense. The real truth is that magic does exist today, and is practiced, and that most people, whether they call it magic or not only believe in it, but secretly use some sort of magic, if only in very small and hidden ways. And then it goes on to describe people with essentially superstitions in the modern day, or power positive thinking, the secret kind of ideas of the law of attraction and that sort of thing. You know, this whole idea of belief in magic, it shows up in modern fantasy, but it shouldn't really be showing up that much in your Dungeons and Dragons game, unless wizards are incredibly rare, because everyone has access to cantrips like Firebolt, other abilities, Healing Word, that are quite remarkable and definitively prove in an instant the existence of magic. All right, as for magic item, again, nothing really that great. Back in the section on Outer Planes, Gary Gygax goes on to spend actually most of the article talking about magical weapons and how creatures such as angels and demons exist on multiple planes at once, and so when you strike them with a normal weapon on the prime material plane, you are not harming their soul on one of the upper or lower planes, so you have to hit them with a magical weapon that also exists in multiple planes at the same time, including those outer planes, and then it can hit them, but only if it's of a certain level of power. And even Planescape did this. They had magical weapons of +3, being +3 on the plane they're made, but gradually as they go to adjacent planes, losing power, +2 on one, +1 on another, until they're just mundane weapons on some other plane. It's just not that exciting, and there's no real basis for it in mythology, so I tend to skip it. If it's a +3 weapon, it's a +3 weapon, no matter where you use it. All right, so is there a good je ne sais quoi for Dragon number 8? Not really. It's the Finzer family. They take up most of the magazine with their tale of modern magic, and their tale of modern magic is a kid who gets beat up after school for being a nerd, so not terribly exciting. Hopefully, Dragon number 9 will be a bit better. Thank you. Good night.